Use. That's right. Short and snappy. Use. What's it all about? We're going to find out, okay? Use has two applications. For a start, it can be used for reading your context. You have some React context somewhere in your application and you want to get the value out of that, or maybe even a setter out of that context. You can simply use. The other application for use is to read your asynchronous data. So you have a promise somewhere. It could be a promise that's been fired off from one of your server actions, and it's doing something. It's taking some time. It's making an API request, and then once that promise is resolved, you want to use the value from that promise. Again, you can use to extract that value. If you have the parent of where you're using use wrapped in a suspense, while it's getting the data from the promise, so while it's waiting for that promise to resolve, will actually trigger the fallback from that suspense. So what makes this different from other hooks and from use context, which is the old method of getting data from your context, is it can be used within conditional statements. So it can be inside an if statement, it can be used in loops, it can be used where you've got, say, if something is loading, return a loading spin, and they can use underneath that. Whereas before, the other hooks and use context, they all have to be above that, has to be at the top level of a component before any sort of conditional rendering happens. So let's use to see how to use, if that makes any sense. We're going to start in a blank canvas. Let's do npx create react app the use hook -yt. We're going to use template TypeScript as well. That took way too long. So now we're going to cd into whatever you call that. So in my case, it is the use hook YT, I think. Set tab and hope it also completes if you forget. And I'm going to do codes.-r, and that will open it up in the current VS Code window I had open. Right, first thing we're going to do is open up the package.json. You can hit Control P, by the way, to bring this up if you don't know, and then type in the file name. We're going to open our terminal back up. We'll do a yarn, add exact. You want the exact type react@rc, react DOM@rc. You only have to do the following if you React 19 isn't already stably released, otherwise you would just do React 19 would already be installed in that case. So just check this version number here, and if that isn't React 19 already, yarn add --exact react@rc and react-dom@rc. Because we're using TypeScript, you're going to need to update these types, so that it's going to use React 19. So that's just type/react. We want to change that to npm type/react rc. And then the same for React DOM, except react-dom@rc. Add the overrides to enforce that we are using those versions. Overrides at type/react, I think it is. Yeah, I'm just going to close down the terminal so we've got a bit more room down there on the screen so we can read what we're typing. Right, npm react. No, it's types-react. Let's see. If in doubt, just check what you wrote up here. Yeah, and then at types/react DOM npm types react DOM rc. Then we're going to go ahead, do a yarn, lovely, and then do a yarn start, make sure everything loads up okay. Apparently that's started, no issues found, I love it. Now if I switch over to Chrome, beautiful. Like I said, there's two applications of use, one of which is context. So we're actually going to set context up in this React app, and the other is a whole promise, getting values from a promise, and we're going to go over that later. I'm just going to set a few things up. I'm actually going to create a providers file. So in here, I'm going to create a new component called providers.tsx. It's going to be a real simple component for now. We're literally just going to get the children or whatever's passed down. Can't be a type any, so it's going to be really lazy about this, and it's going to be react.react node for children. Okay, we're going to display those children. Doesn't even need to be a div, just, yeah, it's real basic so far. But we're going to add our context to that in a moment. I'm going to create a new file called context.tsx. And again, we don't really have anything to add here just yet. Although we will, again, do the same thing we did before. Should probably make this an interface. Stop repeating myself, but I'm being lazy, I'll be honest. So it's going to be react node. And just to demonstrate context, we're going to create a theme context.ts. And this is actually going to, we'll import create context for a start. And that should be from React. I'll do it myself then. I spelled something wrong. Oh, I've done a capital C. Create context from React. And we will export const theme context equals create context. And that is going to have theme, which will be a string. We're going to set that to dark by default because dark mode, best mode. And set theme, that is going to be a function that's not going to return anything, and that's going to be our setter. We'll get into that in a bit. I'm sorry, this is a lot of setup, I know, but we're actually going to add types.ts because TypeScript will complain at us later if we don't. And we're going to export a type for theme, and we're going to have two options for this. There's just going to be dark and light. That's nice and simple. We go back to our theme context. We're going to apply that type to an interface. So we're going to create an interface. So I always start my interfaces with capital I. And we'll do theme context. And in there we're going to have theme, which is going to be our type theme. So just import that there. And then set theme, which is going to be React. Is it? No, so not React, so just dispatch. We can import that from React dispatch, set state, action, import that from React again. That's going to take in theme, the thing that we're setting, and there we go. We're going to apply that into our create context. So actually it takes in a generic here. We can add iTheme context to our create context here. And that's all typed up nicely. So theme is type theme, which means light or dark. Nice. We're going to work on getting that all hooked up now. We're going to import, this is in our context.tsx file. We're going to import theme context right there. And I'm actually going to set some state as well. So this is going to be what's going to set the initial theme value and the setter function for our context as well, for when we want to change the theme later down the line. So I'm going to import useState from React, and we're also going to give it the type theme as well. Be very explicit with our typing, and default that to dark. So you see that as well, you get the nice sort of autocomplete as well, so we're using TypeScript. It's great. So we want to return that context. So you're going to use theme context here, dot provider, and then we need to set the initial values here. So that's going to have value, that's going to be an object, which is going to be an object, yep. So, and that's going to take in theme, which is going to be theme. Then we also want set theme, that's going to be set theme, right? Oh, and we don't want to return context. No, that would be weird. We want to return children, so we're going to use this in our providers. So it's going to wrap our application basically, so we always have access to the theme. Anyway, let's go ahead and use our context here in our providers. Yep, grab that from context. That's all we need to do here. Which probably because we'll have different types of context in a real application. You might have context coming from packages, like you might have MUI context or something like that. And this is where we would put that, essentially, in this file here. We're going to go to the root of our application, and that is this index.tsx file. You see, this is where our app gets imported and displayed. And we're going to wrap that in our context. Not context, we're going to wrap that in our providers. So our app, everything within our app and any children of app, which is going to be everything, essentially, will have access to our context. Love it. Now, to keep things nice and modular, we're going to create a components folder. And in here, we're going to add context example.tsx. And we'll do RFC, that snippet, that just gives us a nice template we can get straight into our coding. And in here, we were going to actually have a button, and we're going to have switch theme as the name of that button. Wonder what that's going to do, mystery. And then, well, we need to grab the theme, and we can do that using use. So we're going to grab theme, and that's going to equal use, import that, right, and what is that going to take in as an argument? Our context, which we can import, theme context, just like that. And if I do this, my console.log, theme, if I can spell it, if I console.log theme, I'm going to go back to Chrome, I'm going to hit F12, give that a refresh. It's not doing anything. Do you know why? Not importing a component, am I? So let's go back to our code. Go back to this lovely thing right here. And I'm going to import context example. I was just thinking what I called it again there. Context example. I gave it a great name. Of course I did. Then if we now go back to Chrome, dark. We're using use to extract the theme value, right? But it's not actually switching the theme yet. We haven't implemented our setter function. I'm just going to show you how to do that quickly. We're going to create a function in this file. I'm going to get rid of that, but I'll keep that console log. Keep it for now. Const handle theme toggle. It's going to be an arrow function. We're going to do if theme is dark. That's a string, Aiden. Yep. If theme is dark, we actually need to import set theme. So you remember when we created the context earlier, we have theme and set theme here. Oh, that's exactly what we're extracting using use. If I go back to our context example, we're just extracting those two bits of state that we're passing down all the way up. It's in the app. It's in, not even the app, it's in the index. It's in the root of our project. And we're just grabbing it like it's nothing so easily using that use hook. That's the power of use. Now let's actually set this. So if it's dark, we want to set theme. Well, we can only set it to light in that case. Otherwise, let's set theme equal to dark. We want to add an on click event listener. That's why I always type worse when I'm recording. It's the pressure. Can't handle it. And that's going to be handle theme toggle. I'm going to go back to Chrome. We're going to open that up. We're going to hit this button. Let's switch it to light. It works. But just for the skeptical people out there, we're going to implement a wee bit of theming to actually get it to work properly. Because at the moment, you can just see a console log. That's not too interesting. It doesn't really prove much. So here's what we're going to do. We've opened up app.tsx. Follow along now if you want to. We're going to import brain freeze theme. That's going to be from use. Just use. Can't get over how short the hook is. Just use. We're going to grab that because we can so easily with that lovely hook. And we're not going to use this rubbish class app. No, that's going to be theme, which we're dynamically setting, by the way. Now we're going to want to implement some styles. So open up your app.css. Down here, remember our two themes? We got dark. We're going to have a class called dark, and that's going to set the background color to black. Yes, and then the color, which is the text color, it's going to be white. Very original. Fantastic theming. Then we're going to have light. The light class. Background color. Wonder what Aiden's going to set it as. White. You guessed it. Wonder what the color's going to be. You guessed it. Black. Right. Beautiful. Off opens Chrome up. I'm going to hit that button again. Switch theme. We got a white background now because we're on light mode. We got a black background now because we're on dark mode. This has still got some styling. Ignore it. It's not following our lovely convention. Just look at this tiny little strip. In fact, to make things clearer, bear with me. Let's go back in here. Let's go in our code. I'm going to go into app.csx and we're going to we'll get rid of all that and we'll just have a nice sort of hello, I'm changing colour. Isn't that mad? I hope it works, otherwise that'll be a bit embarrassing, that message. I'm going to go back onto Chrome. Whoa! That's fantastic, that styling. Oh, no way. That is all working. I just hope this demonstrates how easy it is to extract values from context now. And what makes it powerful as well is if I go back on here, if I wrap this in an if statement, if true, it's always going to be true, it's true as true. We can use that in there, although that's not going to be in scope anyway, so we'll actually have to do let theme and just, will that work? Oh, is that going to be a thing? Is that going to work? No, I don't think it is. I think I need to do theme equals that dot theme. Okay, I'm challenging myself here. This is advanced programming. That's in an if statement. That is a hook in an if statement. Just going to refresh that to make sure it is actually working. It doesn't just cache the working version. And that's working. Can't do that with use context or any other hook really. The power of theme, of use, not theme. The power of use, it's fantastic. Just going to get rid of that if statement because without the context of that cheeky little demonstration, it just looks really weird. I'm going to do the old destructuring as well because again, just looks a bit weird to me. It's alright to be weird. It's alright to do weird things, but yeah, context. The promise example up next. What we're going to do, we're going to create another file in our components folder called message container. And this will all become clear. Now I'm just going to start coding it out and you will see the picture unfold. It'll be like a piece of art. It'll be beautiful. Now we're going to have a container that's actually wrapped in suspense. There's a capital S. I doubted myself. No, we're going to do... Oh, I didn't do my nice snippet RFC. Just type it out the old-fashioned way. Export default function, message container. And that is going to take in a message promise. And that message promise is going to be... I'm going to have a type. So message promise... I thought I've never used a keyboard before with this. So that's going to be a promise. That's going to take in a string there. Okay. And then this $return. You could save yourself all of that hassle just by doing RFC, that lovely snippet, by the way. I don't know why I've done that. So fallback is going to say awaiting message ... And then in here, we're just going to return, we're not going to return anything for now. We'll actually import another component. We'll create another component first. There's going to be promise example. And promise example is actually going to be a client component because React 19, things are by default server components. Components are by default server components. So use client to do non-server things. We're actually going to use our up here, not an return. We're going to use again. We're going to get message content. We're going to use for that. And this component, I'm going up and down. Sorry, I'm not very focused here. So we're going to take in a child here, a prop, message promise. And again, it's going to have the same type again. Message promise. That is a promise. That takes in a string. Sure does. And that's going to be used. And then there we want to pass in our promise. Message promise. Okay. What we can do is we can say on here something like, here, the message just arrived hot off the press. It's like breaking news or something. It's going to be some juicy gossip. Message content. Why is this angry? Message content does not exist on type string. I think it's in an object, does it? Yay! Problemo solved. Again, this isn't going to do anything yet. We do need to import our message container here. But that takes in a message promise. We don't have a message promise yet. We're going to create one. We're going to create a new file in here called lib.ts. Now, a real world example, this file would contain several server actions or just helper functions and such. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use server, because this is just for our server actions. And we're going to make an API call. Can't be bothered to set up a real API or anything. We're going to do fetch message. That is going to be an asynchronous function, an asynchronous arrow function to be precise. And that's going to await a new promise. And we're going to resolve the parameter, set timeout. That's going to resolve our promise. And how long do we want to suspend our users for? Let's do that. And then what's our juicy goss? Return tea has been spilt. This is some juicy stuff. Lovely. Right, let's go back to our app.tsx. We're going to do import. I can't import there, can I? We're going to do const message promise equals fetch message. We're going to import that function, that asynchronous function we just created there in lib.ts. We're going to pass that down to message container. And then remember, message container, we're getting that as a prop. I'm not importing my other component here, am I? So I'm going to have to do promise example, and I have to import that component, promise example, and that's going to be angry because it wants a message promise as well. Well, good thing, sir. We got one of them. Right, shall we see if that actually does anything? Well, oh no, our message has already arrived. We're going to have to do a refresh here to see it in action. Awaiting message. Okay, fantastic. That's all working. What's happening here? In our app.tsx, initially on render, on the first render, initial render, initially, could have just said initially and left it there. We're grabbing this message promise. We're calling this fetch message function. That's firing off straight away. And we're passing it down to this message container. This message container is wrapped in a suspense. Now, when we use here, how many times I've said use today, this will actually trigger the fallback of this suspense here. And that is why we are seeing this awaiting message when we just initially load our application. That is our use in action, waiting to get the result of that promise. And just to sort of finish this all off, we can make this a bit nicer. If we go back to our app.tsx, I'm going to use some state here because I don't like it how to see this in action we need to just reload the page. So I'm going to create a bit of state here. That's going to be message promise. It's going to get angry with me because there's already a message promise, but yeah, just comment that out. Set message promise. That is equal to use state. What does that take in? That takes in a promise, which takes in a string. And what could be null, like, so we're not going to have a message initially. No, we're not. We're going to have null initially. Right. And then, oh, why is that not happy? Oh, yeah. I know what's going on here. So we don't want to render this message container unless there is a message promise. So simply, only when that's true, we render that message container, and now that TypeScript red squiggly line is gone. Anyway, I want to actually trigger this fetching message asynchronous function on button click. So I'm going to create a new button here. We're going to say fetch me a new message. And we're going to create a function to handle that. We don't need that. Clean up our code nice and tidy. So handle fetch message is going to equal an arrow function. And that's just going to simply set this to fetch message. As we see here, it takes in a promise straight. It takes in our message that we've all set up earlier. Lovely. And on click, that is going to fire off our function there to get this process in action. If I go back to Chrome, I'm going to just close that down for now. Don't need it. Refreshing. Hit the button. Awaiting message. Got the message. That's all working. So as with most of the new hooks, use makes working with server-side code a lot easier. And the fact that you can just grab context just like so easily, I'm a fan. That's all I've got to say about use. See you next time. Goodbye.